What up, gamers? I'm Jason.
I'm Julie.
And today on Dice & Dragons, we are doing a little bit of a Halloween special. We did play Aliens Bug Hunt last week, so this is, of course, the week of Halloween. We're playing another horrific game. This is Eldritch Horror by Fantasy Flight Games. Now, this game is designed by Konieczka and Nikki Valens, based on Arkham Horror that was designed by Richard Launius and Kevin Wilson. Now, with that being said, Julie's going to take it away and tell you more about the game itself.
So this is a cooperative game that's intended for ages 14 and above. It plays 2 to 8 players, and the...
1 to 8. 1 to 8.
Just cheated and looked at the back of the box. He is correct. 1 to 8 players. And it plays in 2 to 4 hours. I would say it can be less than that if you're playing 2 players. We were playing it in probably about an hour.
I'd say, yeah, between an hour to 90 minutes. Solo, you can probably play through the game in about a half hour. I think a good way to look at it is about half hour per player, which would make sense with the 4-hour time at the full player count.
Yep. Now,
you could definitely play it a lot faster by having people take multiple actions. Well, because when you're going across the board, you don't really need to go through a specific sequence of events in order. And if you've got multiple sets of dice, you can speed up the time. But make sure you're an experienced player before you do that. Now, what will you be doing in Eldritch Horror? Well, you are battling the forces of the Elder Gods as Cthulhu, Azathoth, and I probably messed up that name, it's so hard to pronounce, are returning to the world and are going to just make life miserable for human beings. So what you're doing is traveling around the world. You will be closing gates, trying to prevent the doom track from reaching its end and the ancient god from awakening and wreaking havoc around the world. You will have 2 actions per turn to do this. You will also be facing off against monsters, going on expeditions, and researching clues as to how you can prevent the awakening of these elder gods. Did I miss anything, Julie?
I think you pretty much covered it.
So what are we going to do now?
We're going to grab our drinks.
Grab our best friend? Or, well, I think you're my best friend. I'm still sane right now.
And we're going to take a table one more time.
One more time. Hopefully you don't go insane this time.
Hopefully.
Ooh. Now we're going to take a look at the components for Eldritch Horror. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get everything on camera. I've got most of the stuff, well, not every single component, but enough to give you a great idea as to what's going to be coming in the box. So we'll get started, and a few things will join us on camera, like these rule books that I'm going to be jumping on right now as we go along. So you do get the standard FFG rulebook for the game that's going to give you a little bit of background. I always love these Cthulhu Mythos stories that FFG has for the Arkham series. Tell you how to set up the game. I like the layout. I like the look of it. It definitely feels like it's part of the time. And in this book, you're really only going to get the rules for the game. Now, there is a reference guide. And when I said about the rulebook only having the rules, there are some more details in the reference guide, and on the back you do have the quick reference sheet that'll help you if you need to learn anything while you're playing the game, or just a quick reminder. So of course we've got the game board, which will be the last thing that we look at. We've got the monster tokens. So these red ones are epic monsters like Cthulhu, zombie hordes, TikTok men, Scythilla is Cthulhu's daughter, a Nug, the Dunwich Horror. So lots of scary stuff that can make it out to the board. And this is just a small sampling of the monsters that are available in the game. You've got a Byakhee, Amigo, Cultist. They might have some special effects that you'll see listed on their tokens. Ghosts, Night Gaunts, Warlocks, Vampires, and all monsters have instructions on the back, the sanity test, the strength test, as well as their toughness. Now the game will include 4 dice. We have the Doom token, your sanity and health tokens that have denominations of 3 and 1. Then you've got the train and ship tickets. Here we've got the player reference cards. So the game is for 1 to 8 players, and you'll just be using these reference cards depending on the player counts to tell you how many clues you'll spawn, gates, how many monsters spawn with a monster surge, what happens at 4 players, 5 players, 6, 7, all the way up to 8 players. Here we've got the lead investigator token, and I couldn't find the definition for this token. I do believe it's got something to do with one of the ancient ones specifically. So let's go into the ancient elder ones. We have 4 of them in the game. We've got Yog-Sothoth, Shub-Niggurath, Azathoth. I butchered that one. I'll try again. Azathoth. Tough one to say. And of course, Cthulhu. Now, each of these ancient ones will have their setup instructions on the card, a reckoning effect, the stats for cultists, also how to set up their mythos deck, which we'll take a look at in just a second. But they all have their own sets of cards, so each of them do have 4 mysteries. Now, in order to defeat the ancient one, you must resolve 3 of the mysteries. So you will use this during setup. It'll give you the instructions as to what to do, and then immediately when it's resolved, you will flip over the next mystery card. You will also have some special encounters for certain elder ones. Don't want to spoil them, but take a look at the back. So like the key and the gate. And for Cthulhu here, you're going to be exploring, of course, the sunken city of R'lyeh. And then whenever you're going to be encountering a clue token, and you'll do a research encounter, which are different for each of the elder ones. So these were parts of the components that I couldn't keep on the board. Let's take a look at the mythos cards, which is often bad stuff. So you've got 3 different colors of mythos: green, blue, and yellow. And you're going to be mixing these up each time when you set up the deck. Of course, you must then resolve all of these in order and then follow through on the event at the bottom part of the card. So we've taken a look at the elder ones. Let's take a look at our characters, our heroes. Now, each hero will be represented by a standee. There are a lot of heroes in the game, so I didn't set up the standees. You've got this nice example of the very manly sailor man, Silas Marsh. Now let's take a look, and we're not going to go through all of their powers, but each hero has an action that they can use and a special ability. So this action is one of the things they can do during the action phase. So you may move 1 space along a ship path and perform 1 additional action, which is pretty cool. And then if you're on a sea space, investigators on your space roll 1 additional die when resolving tests. You have your health, your sanity, and then your stats, which can be improved by 1 or a maximum of 2 as you're playing the game. So we've got Silas, Charlie Kane, the politician. You'll see that his stats are very different, a lot weaker, but more sane. Leo Anderson, the expedition leader. Akachi Onyele, who is a shaman. Norman Withers, the astronomer. Mark Harrigan, the soldier. Lily Chen, the martial artist. Jim Culliver, the musician. Tris Scarborough, the spy. Lola Hayes, the actress. Jacqueline Fine, the psychic. Diana Stanley, the redeemed cultist. And we're now back to Silas. You'll see on the back, you get their starting location and their starting gear. You also get a little bit of a background on the characters. And then if you happen to die, defeated via health, what will happen if someone wants to get your stuff, or if you go insane, what happens. Because if your character dies, don't worry, you're just going to pick a new one and keep on playing. But bad things do happen. Doom will advance if you fail in your quest to stop the elder ones. Now, we also have the active expedition token, which will go out on the board. So expeditions, you'll see, are at different locations represented by the back of the cards. You'll have to go through multiple stages. If you succeed, you go through the top part. Well, this is the first thing. Then success takes you here. Failure takes you here. You will follow through what happens, and you may even find an artifact, which I knocked these over. I'll just fix that quickly. Artifacts, and I have 2 spells that were left in. So in any case, artifacts are very powerful items like a lightning gun, which gives you +6 when resolving encounters. You can also use special action. You've got the Ruby of Riley. Once per round during the action phase, you may spend 1 sanity to get another action. So lots of cool stuff that you can do with these artifacts. After that, you've got the 5 sets of encounter cards. If you happen to go through a gate, well, we'll take a look at the gate tokens. They spawn in specific places and have these omen symbols, which will trigger monster surges as you play the game. Now, if you happen to go through a gate, you will have a otherworldly encounter. Once again, these are multi-sequence encounters like the expeditions. Next, you've got the encounters for generic spaces. So it'll be city, wilderness, or sea, depending on where you are at on the board. Then if you're at specific locations, you may have an encounter in Arkham, San Francisco, or Buenos Aires. Now, each of these locations will have different things that will potentially happen. For example, just trying to see if there's one that's very clear there. In the Vatican Library in Rome, it'll give you a chance to improve your will. So I believe that's what you can do there. It's written on the board. Can't remember off the top of my head. So Shanghai, Tokyo, Sydney. And these correspond to the purple spaces. Now, we've got the Omen track marker here, the lead investigator marker. We talked a little bit about the improvement markers. We've got the mystery marker for when it's on the board. Rumor markers for those blue mythos cards, Eldritch tokens, which are generic and can be used for anything. We've got clues, which spawn locations on the back of the clues. We've got all the different conditions that are typically bad, unless you're blessed. And if you happen to have to resolve the reckoning effect, well, you flip over what it says on the back of the condition and resolve it. So these definitely just remain mixed up, and you'll draw them randomly as you're going through the game. We've got the deck of spells, which can be combat. They can help you with skills and abilities. So Plumb the Void. So for example, lore -1, if you pass an investigator of your choice, may move to any space. You can get some clairvoyance. You can get the Blessing of Isis, which will give you a blessed condition. So lots of cool stuff in terms of these spells. And then lastly, we need to take a look at our asset cards, which can be services, items, weapons, trinkets. We can even get allies like the private investigator that will boost your skills. So lots of good stuff, and you want to make sure that you do get some good items, because if you're not able to fight, let's say you're Charlie Kane, the politician, with a strength of 2, if you don't have a good gun, running to monsters is going to be very, very challenging. So the last thing that we need to do is take a look at the board. Now, this is a rather large board, so I'm going to do my best to showcase it. I'm just getting it all opened up right now. And it makes sense that the board is so large because you are globetrotting in this game. So let me just take this away. Don't want to smack the camera, but there we go. So you can take a look at the board. We'll do a nice sort of slide. You can see the Doom track at the top. You can see the Omen track over in the corner, and then all of the different locations that are on the board, place for your asset cards. I just wanted to give an overview. We will get this all folded up and put away, as we've now taken a look at an overview of the components for Eldritch Horror. And normally we'd be going into our full how to play, but as this is a game from 2013, we're going to do a gameplay overview. There's lots of great how to plays out there, but we are Dice and Dragons. We do like to show you what you're getting into with the game, and with regards to how large the board is, doing a gameplay overview makes more sense because we're going to be able to show all the components properly with the equipment we have. So keep it right here. We'll be back in a flash. Now we're going to go over what you will be doing in Eldritch Horror. So the game is set up. Now this is not a perfect setup. As you can see, because of the camera, some of the stuff is cut off. We're basically taking all the space over here to show you the Ancient One with the Doom set to 12. Now this Mythos deck would be a lot smaller. I just threw all the cards out there because we're just doing a gameplay overview. You would set it up as per the instructions on the Ancient One. You will also reveal their first mystery. In this case, it says to put the mystery token here on space 3. We've got Silas March, the sailor, who is going to be our character, our investigator. He's got the lead investigator token, which he'll use in games with multiple players. This is a one-player setup. And his starting item, the fishing net. We've got the research encounter cards, the specific Riley Risen encounter cards. We have an expedition over in Tunguska. The omen track is at the proper position. We also have spawned one gate for starting, which spawned one monster, Amigo, in Tokyo. Now it's important to note that if you do see this symbol on a Mythos card, it is a reckoning effect. You must resolve the effect on the back of the monster. Now, we're going to actually go through a turn of the game and just explain how to play and a few other elements that are going to come into effect. Now, during your turn, you may take 2 actions, and you want to take a look at what you have for your character-specific actions because they will differ. For example, Silas may move 1 space along a sea path and then take an additional action, which is pretty cool, meaning he can basically use the travel action and then travel again if he so chooses, moving very rapidly across any of the sea paths. Now, you should keep this reference guide handy with you because it'll tell you what you can and can't do. So the actions are travel, prepare, acquire assets, which you can do with only if there are no monsters in your city spaces. So city spaces they have this symbol. So all the big major locations as well as the black ones. That's where you can gain travel tickets. Now you can only gain tickets that are associated with your location. So for example, Rome, you can get train tickets as well as the boat tickets because they've got both. Here in this city, you could only gain the boat tickets because that's all you can do. Now you may rest to recover 1 health and 1 sanity in spaces without monsters. You may trade, or you can use a component action, which would be an action like Silas is right there on his investigator, or one that is on a spell, item, or something else that you have in your hand. After that, you go into the encounter phase, which would be a location encounter. So either based on a location or a token encounter, which will be related to the clue or the gate that is open. Then we've got the instructions for the Mythos phase. So we're going to set that aside and just go through the actions really with you in terms of what you can do. So travel, and any travel action is move 1 space. Now, Silas' special ability is he can move 2 spaces. So for example, let's say we want to go to Tokyo, which makes sense. There's a gate, there's a monster, stuff that we can do, but maybe we don't want to travel right away. You can do 2 actions during your turn. So let's say we want to gain an asset. Well, and take a look at our influence, which is 3, and we will perform a test. To do the test, we roll 3 dice, and any 5 or 6 counts as a success. In this case, it's not a good roll, not much we can do. If we had a clue token, we could spend it to re-roll a die. Now, all these assets have a different value on them. So depending on how many successes, that's what you can buy. And there will be always 4 assets available in the reserve that you can access. So we're going to just pretend because we got to get into combat. Well, imagine that this was actually a 5 and Silas acquired his whip. Now, I did not set up Silas's health and sanity. I could take a rest action if this was later on in the game to regain 1 sanity and 1 health. You can only gain back up to your maximum. So keep that in mind. It's always 1 sanity, 1 health, and you can't do the same action twice. So you can only do each action once. So we've covered acquire assets, we've covered rest, we've covered travel. So trading in a 1-player game, it's not possible. Essentially, you just need to have another investigator in the same space as you, and then you would be able to conduct the trade action. So as Silas is alone, the trade action is not available. Now we're in Sydney. If I'd like to prepare to be able to move, let's say, 3 spaces along the track, well, then I could spend the prepare action to get the boat ticket. What a ticket does is it lets you move an extra space along a train track, the red tracks, or a blue track, the boat track, depending on your ticket, when you take a travel action. All right, so let's take a look at what we do. So in a real turn, good starting thing would be acquiring some assets, using the ability to move to Tokyo, and then we go into the encounter phase. Now, if there is a monster, the first thing we must do is encounter the monster. So to do that, we must pass a horror check, which is our will. There is no negatives. We need to get at least one success, otherwise we will lose a sanity. Now we got 2 successes there, so we're good. Next, we need to do 3 damage to this Migo, and we've got a strength of 3 plus 1, 4, and then we have some stuff that will let us re-roll a die, and we can reduce the damage of monsters you're engaged with by 1 to a minimum of 1. So we can reduce its damage, which is pretty cool. So we can roll a total right now of 4 dice for this test. So we roll 4 dice. Wow, I couldn't have scripted that better. That's really good. We have 3 successes, so we pass the 2. Only need to pass 1 because of the net. We deal 3 damage. The monster is then defeated, which will then allow us to have an encounter of our choice. Now, we can either have the otherworldly encounter or the Tokyo encounter. We'll take a look at both of them as we're teaching the game. So for a Tokyo encounter, we would draw a purple card, see what happens in Tokyo. So you may come delayed to explore some submerged pyramids off the coast of Okinawa. If you become delayed, you just lay your character down. You cannot do any actions during your next turn. If you do discover ancient writing that claims to harm one enemies, 1 monster of your choice on any space loses 3 health. So that's not a really great Tokyo action for us. Let's take a look at another one. So for example, a strange man dressed in charred robes of a monk offers you help in exchange for knowledge. You can spend a clue to convince a black monk to assist you and discard 1 monster of your choice. So Tokyo, you'll notice all these cards here are about defeating monsters, not really increasing our stats, because it says right here, defeat monsters. That's what's typically going to happen. So I'll just take a look and see if there's other things that will happen. So yeah, you really primarily defeat monsters. However, there is a chance for you to gain a blessed condition in Tokyo. So it is not always guaranteed. Now, if, for example, you decided to take the token action, you would go through a gate, and in this case, it is Yugoth. So you discover a fetid creature with wings and webbed feet. The beast is strange, like something from your wildest dreams. You may spend 1 clue to resolve the pass effect, so you can automatically do that. If you do not, you must resolve the fail effect. Well, we don't have a clue, so we must resolve the fail effect. The creature is terrifying, but if you can keep your calm, you'll be able to overpower it. So you must test will. If you pass, subdue the creature, use it to return home, and close the gate. So we will roll the 3 dice. We did happen to get the success, meaning we pass, we then close the gate, removing it from the board. Now this is important because during the mythos phase, let's say for example, we get a few other gates on the board, we'll put them in their actual locations. As this moves around the board, it will advance the doom track. So if we hadn't closed this, next turn, Tokyo would still be open, it'd go up. Next turn, if Rome's still open, this will go up. So that's how the doom track will advance. And just from looking at the tokens, as you can see, you can have multiple of the same symbol, meaning doom can build up very quickly if you leave the gates open. Now, for our following turn, we could move to Tunguska and do a expedition action. We're not going to go over that. I do, however, want to show what happens when you're doing a research action, because this is quite key. So in another world, we went over here at sea. We did not choose to have one of the generic actions, which would have been one of these cards, which applies to any of those spaces. So if I chose not to have a clue action, I could have the sea action that is here. We want to have the research action. We need a clue token. So we would draw from the cards. So during the night, you hear the sounds of the crew battling some unseen enemy. Suddenly, you're face to face with a fish-like monstrosity. Gain this clue and lose 1 sanity, and a deep one ambushes you. If you defeat it, you find an odd relic, gain the Ruby of Riley artifact. Now, if you get ambushed, no matter what we're gaining the clue, you would then have to take the monster from the cup, and I don't have one readily available. It's a deep one. So to simulate that, I'll just use a ghost. You spawn the monster, and you will have to engage it. You can follow the pass effect if you happen to defeat it. So that's how you're going to get clues. Clues can be important, especially if you need to. Let's put that back where it belongs. Sorry. So as I was saying, clues are important, especially if you need to resolve rumors, which will be the blue mythos cards. And quickly, you can see that when a rumor spawns, it'll tell you to spawn a clue, also where the rumor will go. This says space 7, which I'm pretty sure it's covered. So we'll just imagine it said space 13. You mark the location, and then bad stuff happens until it is actually resolved. So keep that in mind. That's why you might need clues. You may also need them to resolve the mysteries. So in this case, for Riley Risen, which would be Cthulhu's Mystery, and we'll go back to another version of the starting game, I decided I wanted to resolve the mystery. I moved to space 3. I would draw a Riley Risen special encounter, and I would resolve it. And if I so happen to succeed, I would then place an Eldritch token. And this says, at the end of the mythos phase, if there are Eldritch tokens equal to half the number of investigators, so 1 or 2 players, you only need to get 1 person to resolve it. Resolve the mystery. Draw the next one, follow its effect, and keep going. Now, this is a gameplay overview. I'm not going to do that. Just want to explain it to you. And don't forget, as you're moving around the board, there are effects from Cthulhu that will come into play. Now, the important thing that's going to keep happening in the game is the mythos phase. Now, when you're going through the mythos phase, feel free to take a look at the reference for everything here. So in this one, it says, advance the omen track, resolve the reckoning effect of anything on the board. In this point, we don't have anything on the board except for Cthulhu. So this says that each investigator in a C space does not contain an Eldritch token. You would place one. So we will imagine that we are there with Silas. So we place the Eldritch token, and if someone happens to move through the space, they'd have to resolve it. But make sure you do this in order. So first things first, advance the omen track, follow through on the reckoning effect. You would then spawn a gate. And so you just take the top gate. So it's Tokyo. That's the one that we just defeated. Doesn't matter though, but you'd spawn the gate in Tokyo. The ones that you defeat, you should set aside. It should be a different one. So there you go. It would be Rome. Now, you can read the flavor text. Now it'll tell you what else happens. In this case, it is Ancient Guardians, 2 monsters spawn on the active expedition space. So pull 2 monsters from the monster cup, spawn them on the active expedition space, meaning you have to defeat them in order to continue. And there you have it. That's what you're going to be doing in the game. Doom has not advanced. Once Doom gets down to 0, you will lose, well, you have to deal with the final mystery and this Risen from the Sea version of Cthulhu. Lots of nasty stuff will happen. Game gets much harder, and you still need to resolve the first 3 mysteries. So you really want to resolve and defeat the Ancient One before Doom gets to 0. And there you have it. That's what you're going to be doing in Eldritch Horror. Now keep it right here, as Julie and I are going to come back at you with our review of the game. So we have returned to the Arkham Files from Fantasy Flight Game with Eldritch Horror. We've played, which ones? Well, Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, Elder Sign. We played some other Cthulhu-themed games. I think that's about it from the Arkham Files for the moment. What did you think of Eldritch Horror?
I enjoyed the aspect of traveling around the map. I thought that was a lot of fun.
You like the world hopping aspect?
I did. I like that different things, also different cities focus on different things that you can potentially upgrade. I enjoyed my characters as well. Some of them are recurring from other games.
Ah, you just reminded me. It was Arkham Horror Final Hour, the other game that we played in the series. Sorry, got off track.
So some of them were similar characters with different powers. So it's an interesting concept that with their different powers. And how they can be used, and I find that it's appropriate, and I like that you can power up with the different things. I felt honestly that it was easier this time to kind of gain things compared to the other games. I don't know how you feel about how you feel.
It's definitely easier to gain assets. I'd have to agree. I think actually Elder Sign is fairly easy to gain assets as well because you're playing with dice, so without gaining those extra dice, you can be in a lot of trouble. But that did feel more challenging than this, having the assets, and we also played characters typically that had good influence. It wasn't that difficult for us to gain.
Well, they don't all. I mean, the actress doesn't have as much
influence. She had 3. We didn't really play with anyone that had like 2 or 1 influence. If only 1 influence, it'd be very difficult. I actually don't think there is a character.
I think one of my characters had 2 influence.
Yeah.
But that being said as well, I mean that what was my character? I think it was Lily.
Lily Chen, yes.
That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say Lily Chen. She was great because every time I upgraded one of my skills, she upgraded it twice. So I powered up really quickly with her, and then I felt really powerful. It was I would have liked to play her against Cthulhu instead of, because we changed characters as we played the different monsters, and it would have been, I think I would have preferred her against Cthulhu because she does definitely.
Yeah, you actually played more characters than me because one of your characters went insane.
Yeah, he definitely went insane. He was very strong, but didn't have a lot of sanity, and I got probably the worst card you can get in the game.
For him.
Well, for him, yeah.
Or anyone with like 4 sanity.
Yeah, I lost 3 sanity when I was ambushed by a deep one. So I lost, and then I rolled the dice and
failed the horror check.
Failed my horror check. Yes, that was a mouthful apparently for me. So that being said, I mean, I like the fact that it's a relatively quick game. I don't know how easy it is to set up because that's Jason's department, but he didn't seem
set up is a pain. Set up and tear it down.
I was going to say, it did seem so bad because he didn't complain about it.
Yes, that's why I cut you off a little bit there. Yeah, it's a pain. There's a lot of different things to take out and sort through. It's not that bad compared to other games. Descent, I'm looking at you, love Descent, but depending on characters, expansions, that can be a real difficult one to set up. This did feel a little easier than Arkham Horror 2nd Edition for sure. But there's a lot of little components that you need to get out, place properly, and the game, because it's this nice big world-spanning board, does take up a lot of room. And I think that actually makes the game a little bit longer to set up, just figuring out where to place everything in terms of what you're going to have for table space. Other than that, though, it's very straightforward. Once you got everything organized properly, fairly easy to set up and get the game going. Well, I will say once it is like the basis set up, very easy to pick up another character and just keep going.
So, I mean, the other thing I guess I'd say is it is, I think, a good balance. I would say almost that perfect balance of not too easy, but also not frustratingly too complicated.
Well, I think I want to jump in there, though.
I was just going to say, so for me, the fact that we beat every monster but almost didn't every time made it fun.
Yeah, but what I wanted to say about that is we played at 2 players. The game definitely has a scaling difficulty based on player count. Playing at 2 investigators has a lot of the same conditions as playing with 1 investigator, so you're not going to be all that challenged. I could easily see how with gate spawns being 2 gates at 4 players, a few bad rolls, things could spiral out of control. On our last play against Cthulhu, just because of the way things were working out, we had a lot of gates open, and with just there being 2 of us, we could not seal them all. We had some pretty terrible rolls to close some gates, failed and fell flat on our face quite a few times, a lot more than any of our other plays of the game, and we were basically 1 turn away from losing when we actually managed to solve that last mystery and save the day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I enjoy the mechanics of this game series, I'd say, because they're somewhat similar. I mean, it's the same mythology, but there's a lot. I would say there's a lot in common. You're probably going to correct me there, but there's a similar flair. But I did definitely enjoy playing this version of it.
Well, the way I look at it is this, and I'm actually agreeing with you. I'm not going to correct you. I would say that final hour feels very different because of the card basis of it and your limited actions, and you don't really get that many opportunities to improve your character. Whereas Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, we've not played 3rd yet. Don't know if we'll actually play 3rd. Got a soft spot for 2E there. It's still on our shelf over there. Eldritch Horror and Elder Sign all really have sort of that same base with your skills, the stats you improve, and the certain items that will all do similar things, as well as the spells. Now, the big difference comes into the fact where in Arkham Horror, there's less chances for you to, say, go insane, die, and like come back to life. You can definitely still die and go insane in that game. You just have a lot more punishing consequences to the character. Gearing up is more challenging than what you'll find in Eldritch, and it's a big part of the game because a lot of those monster encounters you will not succeed. What I do like a lot about Eldritch is, depending on who your character is, a few good rolls from the asset deck, and moving around the board, you can always be effective and build your character up to a point where they're going to be a valued asset for the team. That's something that I felt that you didn't always have happen in Elder Sign or in Arkham Horror. But yes, definitely there's some similar core ideas, but each of them has their own flavor. Mm-hmm. Elder Sign is the quick dice game, which even with a large player count, you're probably going to get through it rather quickly. Eldritch Horror is this big world-spanning pulp adventure in the vein of Indiana Jones, and Arkham Horror is the more localized game that's in one city. Mm-hmm. And I like all of them. And Final Hour is the 1 hour version, but we're not really relating that because it came out, last year? Or this year? Came out in any case, not that long ago, within the last 365 days. So it does have its own feel, whereas Eldritch, Arkham, and Elder Sign came out all around the same time.
So, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say. I mean, it has little standees. It's not minis, but I think the standees are fine. And it's got good production value as far as I'm concerned. It's not the prettiest game I've ever seen, but it's definitely, it does the job.
So I'll share my comments now about Eldritch Horror. I think the game's solid. I had a lot of fun playing the game. I do have to say that the actions and the sequences and the way everything works, it's much more streamlined than Arkham Horror 2E. I can see exactly why when this came out, there was a lot of players that shifted over to this rather quickly, especially once you've mastered the game and are able to potentially take some simultaneous actions. You'll be able to play through this game with a large player count a lot faster than Arkham Horror. 4-player game of Arkham Horror, or we even played a 3-player game of it, is easily 2.5 hours to 3 hours. Like, that's just the way the game's going to work. A 2-player game of this, as we said, was around an hour to an hour and a half, which is just a big plus. You get a lot of the same feel as what you're going to get in Arkham Horror, but the challenges are different. And I really like the world-spanning and world-hopping nature of this game. You also do get some more characters with some interesting flair. I do find that all of the characters, well, not necessarily all of them, I'd say most of them have an action and an ability that's fairly useful, whereas in some of the other games, I feel that there are certain investigators that are just way above the other characters. I'm thinking about, I believe it was the psychiatrist, or as we always remember, because it's probably some very suggestive artwork, the redhead that has the nice bust, as being one of the most key characters to play in Arkham Horror 2E. You do not have any characters like this. I played 3 characters, Julie played 4, and all of them felt very useful. I have to say I was a little bit disappointed with the politician, but that was also a little bit of bad luck. I had great influence, just no good assets to boost my combat skills. And actually, that is very important in the game, is getting those assets, boosting your skills, and it is not that difficult to do. You might find something out through the encounter phase, well, you might find something out in terms of getting a clue or finding an asset through those encounters, or you'll be able to take that action in order to power up your character. The game also does stress the cooperative nature in terms of how you're going to be solving the mysteries. I do like the fact that there is 4 mysteries for each of the Elder Gods, because that does add some replayability to the game. You never know what's going to come up. The way the Mythos deck is constructed, that also adds a lot of replayability. And there are plenty of expansions out there for this game. I don't know if we're going to jump in and get a whole ton of expansions. There are a few that people have said are like really, really good. So maybe we'll look at expanding it. But who knows? We might be getting an Eldritch Horror 2nd edition, or yeah, this is the 1st edition. So maybe a 2nd edition in the near future. So we might want to hold off. But if you're looking for an Arkham Files game, well, one that's going to be a little bit broader in the scope than Elder Sign and has, you know, more of a world-hopping pulp adventure style feel, you're going to get that from this game, and that's something I think that you will not get with any of the other games, even the new 3rd edition of Arkham Horror. So I think I've summarized everything that I want to say about the game. I don't really think there are any major drawbacks to it. I'd have to say that potentially the way that the game scales at the different player counts is the only thing that I can see as being a major drawback.
I mean, obviously we didn't mention it, but it goes without saying. I think we kind of alluded to it. It depends on your rolls as well. I mean, there is some chance to it, so you can end up rolling pretty badly and have a tough game. But that's part of the game.
Yeah, and there are some ways to mitigate it. Make sure you become blessed. Blessed is good.
Yeah, helps out a little bit.
Yes, we got very lucky in our first play. I think we were blessed for most of the game.
So, what's your rating?
So for Eldritch Horror, I'm going to give this a 7. It's not my favorite of the Arkham Files. I really do like the game. I think Elder Sign might be my favorite one still. I just like rolling the dice. I like moving around the cards. But I have to say, even though I'm a real big fan of Arkham Horror, I like this one better. I think that what's also skewing my view maybe a little bit away from a 7.5 and an 8 is that we do have other Cthulhu-themed games in our collection that I'd rather play than this. But this scratches a different itch. Looking at you, Death May Die. What a pleasant surprise that one was.
So I'm going to agree. It's a 7 as well. I don't remember. It's been a long time since we played Arkham Horror. I definitely agree with you. I definitely prefer this one to Arkham Horror. It's a good solid game. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add to it.
Yeah, I think it goes to say that when we're talking about a game and we don't have a lot to add, we have a lot to discuss, as you saw, but there's not a lot of final thoughts, comments, to just say that we've got a solid product here and one that any gamer would be happy to have on their shelf. It's not really going to feel out of place unless you hate cooperative games. If that's the case, stay away from this one.
Yeah, I agree. So I guess on that note, it's time to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when we have new content for you.
And take a look down below in the video description. You'll find links to all of our social media feeds, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you'd like to see pictures of Julie and I playing Eldritch Horror, Elder Sign, and some of the other Arkham Files games, check out those feeds. There are plenty of pictures from all the different games that we've played. One day maybe we'll get the LCG to the table, but we're both completionists. Well, more me than her, but she likes to get everything, so we're kind of trying to stay away from that one. We've got one LCG going on right now, and that's Marvel.
Okay, so for those of you who may not be into the lingo, LCG, living card game.
Yes. Oh, she remembered. Well, that makes sense since you're the one that told me to buy it all and buy the playmats. And also now popping up in front of us, you're going to see links to some of our previously released videos. So the one in front of me is going to be to our most recently released one. And the one in front of Julie is going to take you back to our review on how to play of Arkham Horror Final Hour. So if you really want that game that plays in an hour, that's the one. So what time is it now, Julie?
It's now time to grab our drinks.
Grab our best friend. Yes, I still recognize you. I didn't go insane.
Good.
You recognize me since you went insane?
We gotta keep playing games.
Keep playing games. This one will definitely get back out to the table. Maybe not next Halloween. Maybe we'll go back to the classic Arkham Horror 2nd edition.
Well, it's gonna live on the shelf beside Arkham, isn't it?
Oh, most definitely.